Unfortunately, I had a bit of an accident and accidentally deleted some of my recordings for this dragon. On the last video I was at this stage, and then I decided I needed to do all of these changes. These changes are quite technical and I wasn't really talking much on those recordings anyway, so I don't think it's too much of a loss. Now we're at this stage where I have done all of those changes and I've put in this detail for the lower belly. I'll continue with dragon in this video. Thanks for watching. I remeshed the body with quadrimesher. Then I added a shrink wrap modifier. I wanted to project the high resolution mesh onto the low resolution mesh. I set it to project on surface and then set it to negative. Then I added a multi-rose modifier. I set this to 4 subdivisions. I applied the shrink wrap modifier because it won't display in Sculpt unless you do. After that, I have this layer brush that I've created with a custom alpha that I've created. I also tried VGM brushes. I set it to area plane anchored, constant fall off with a vector displacement. I found that the vector displacement brushes didn't overlap the way I wanted them to, so I decided to try a different approach. This is why I'd made the alpha as well. So I tried a layer brush. I added an alpha to it. I set it to area plane anchored, constant fall off. I tried sRGB colour space and linear rec 709. Both seemed the same to me. Sometimes non-colour or linear rec seems to work better than sRGB, so you do have to be aware of that in Blender. I did try an alpha that I'd made in ZBrush and that seemed to work in sRGB better than non-colour, so I tried this one with sRGB as well, because it was quite similar to the one I'd made in ZBrush. But I actually made this one using Blender. I found a nice add-on called ZShot on SuperHive and it produced a good high quality alpha. Then I raised the gamma level and it worked exactly like the one in ZBrush. So I just laid out all of the scales and it took a long time, so I sped this video up. most of the scales on the body now, but I do still have to do a few more yet. If I see this here, I still got a gap where the scale's missing on the body, so I'll have to draw those in. And I also have to do the scales on the arms. What I've done is I've added a multi-resolution modifier to some of the objects. So the two arms I'm going to be adding scales to. I've also set shade smooth to all of the objects. And I also quadri-meshed the head and then projected the details with the shrink wrap modifier so that they fit to the new topology. What I could do if I wanted to enhance some of these scale details is pick the flatten or contrast brush here. So usually it creates a flat surface, or you can hold down Control and it will do the opposite. So I can just up the contrast of the scales if I want to, and I have to decide whether it's worth it or not really. As the focus isn't really the individual scales, it's detailed enough, probably won't do that. So what I'm going to do is draw out these scales on the arms, and then that should be the dragon finished. I hid some of the objects earlier because I wanted to stop my graphics card whirring in the background a bit. Doing that can be a good idea if you've got lots of objects and you have them at quite a high detail. It helps speed up the process of sculpting a bit in Blender. So that's the arms done. I need to fill in the areas on the body that I missed last time. So it's this area here that needs scales, and this area is covered by the arms, so I don't really need to put those in. If this was a 3D model that I wanted to show from lots of different angles, I would need to put those in, of course. But this is designed to be seen from one view only. Now to put this scale in, it's easier to do it in this angle. Sometimes I fill in more scales than I need to so that I can be sure the pattern's going to be right. I think it's quite good to try and recreate things that other people have designed or that you've seen that might inspire you, because it helps you then learn about those forms and apply them to other work. So these scales here won't be seen because they're covered by the cloud, but I'm going to put them in anyway. The other thing I need to do is use the smooth tool and set that to quite a low strength, just to smooth out the edges of the scales. This project has gone quite a bit slower than it usually would because I'm not used to talking while I work on something. The focus shortcut helps you focus on the selected object or part of a selected object. So if I smooth that out and then focus again, it's going to focus on that part. I'm just smoothing these edges here that look quite jagged. This is where my graphics card is starting to whir again. If I was in ZBrush, I probably wouldn't hear that going on because it uses the CPU and it's quite good at sculpting lots of detail without having any problem, but this is not doing badly at all in Blender, and ZBrush can handle millions of polygons with no problem really. But I am quite impressed by Blender. It's definitely improved since I last used it. And there are some advantages to working in Blender over ZBrush, but there are also advantages in ZBrush. I'm not going to stop using ZBrush, but I will not stop using Blender either. I found the reference image system in Blender a lot easier to use than ZBrush. ZBrush uses something called a spotlight. I was experimenting with ZBrush to see if I could line up the picture onto the 3D model so I could try the VDMs if I needed to do the scales in that program, but I didn't have much luck with that at all. And I would show you what I mean, but I really don't want to try and do it again. The trouble is with ZBrush in that regard is that if I want to zoom into the model with the image overlaid on it, the picture doesn't stay where it is on the model, so it's useless as a way to lay the scales in. To isolate an object when you're sculpting on it, you can also use the isolate view shortcut, which is divide on the numpad. Pressing it once isolates it to one object, and then pressing it again shows all the objects again. A handy thing about having more than one view is that I can see which areas I've missed and then focus to them in the other view. This is something that I wouldn't be able to do in ZBrush. One thing I do miss from ZBrush is the trim dynamic and the hard polish brush. I don't think there's an equivalent in Blender that works quite as well, but it doesn't really matter. Quite like the rounded look of the scales anyway. So there are some areas here on these scales on the body that I think could do with being sharpened up a bit. I must have been a bit too overzealous with the smooth brush there. In the reference I can't see this bit of that, so I'm going to move that to the left a bit, or what I could do is just trim it off completely. It doesn't have a modifier on it, so I could use the trim tools on it. So anything that is below this line should be removed, but that's caused a bit of a problem. So I'm going to use the lasso trim instead. So that's not showing there now, but there's a few scales missing that I need to put in there. Now that I've sorted those problems out, I'm going to put the detail back into these scales a bit. So I need to use something like crease polish. I could also use the crease sharp brush just to draw in the details again, but at a bit of a lower strength. I don't want to be crazy and start crease polishing all of these scales because I'll be another 2 hours doing it. So I'm going to leave it there for now. But there are some areas here that I'd like to smooth out a bit. These claws I've just set a subdivision surface to. I'll increase that to 2. and if I shade smooth it, that will help. Actually, to save time, I will select all the objects and then shade smooth, just in case I missed any. Something that you can do when you're sculpting in Blender is you can change the matte cap that you're going to use. One that's got more specularity will bring out the details of the model a bit better. Another thing you can do in Blender is sculpt in the viewport shading mode. So if you wanted to have the shadows and everything showing while you're sculpting, that's something you can do. Now I'm not quite finished with this dragon because I do need to give him some little pupils. So on the reference image here, I've got where the pupils should be. So I disabled the view of the 3D cursor in this window earlier. So I want to put the 3D cursor over the eye where the pupil is going to be. And I need to add I think I'll just use a UV sphere. Then I'm going to scale that down. So that's about where the eye is. Control A, rotation scale. If I shade smooth that, it looks smooth, so I'm not going to do anything else to it. Now there are bits in the mouth I can see from this angle that need some smoothing work yet, and I could also put a bit more detail into these places. But the other eye, I'm going to put the 3D cursor there. Then I'm going to duplicate this, right click, and right click, origin to 3D cursor, geometry to origin, then scale that down, then Control A, rotation scale. So now I've got my pupils. And I'm going to select a material for the pupil. I could select this one, or I could make a completely new one. I'm going to add a new material and call it pupils. Then select this one, Control L, link materials. Now I want to make this darker, and I'm going to turn the roughness right down so that the eye pupils are really shiny. What I could do also is add different materials to the teeth and the tongue. What I can do in Blender, and you can also do this in ZBrush, is in the stroke option there's a stabilize stroke, and this sets the radius of how much it's going to stabilize. So it's basically like a sort of pulled string, so it's a bit too much at the moment. It's not too controllable, so I'm going to lower that a bit. I don't really need to use it, but sometimes for drawing out long lines it can be quite useful. Another thing I could do if I wanted to sharpen up certain details is use the pinch magnify brush. So I think I've sharpened up the details a bit more and smoothed out where it needed. That will do, although I'm not too happy with this here. So here is the finished dragon. What I want to do is make a bas-relief using this 3D model, and I'm going to try the Buildiform add-on and relief maker to do that and then compare the results. It was a really interesting thing to do and I'm glad I've done it, and it was good practice in Blender. I think there are things that I couldn't have done using ZBrush, and I'm very impressed with Blender's sculpting tools. What might be interesting as well is to do a bit of texturing, so that could be something I'll do in a future video. Thank you for watching.